Welcome to Restoria. I'm Jenna, and this is your cozy corner for gentle bedtime stories. Each night, I'll share peaceful tales made to quiet your thoughts and guide you softly into sleep. So settle in, get comfy, and let the story carry you into rest. The story tonight is called The Ivy-Covered Phone Booth. Chapter 1, Rain in the Garden Park. The rain is gentle today. Not a storm, not a downpour, just a soft, steady hush that seems to smooth the edges of everything it touches. Leo walks without purpose, hands in the pockets of his damp jacket, the hood of his sweatshirt pulled loosely over his curls. The gravel paths are dappled with puddles that shimmer faintly beneath the overcast sky. All around him, the small garden park breathes quietly, empty benches glistening, flower beds heavy with droplets, the air carrying the clean scent of earth and green things. He hadn't meant to stop here. Just walking, really, letting his feet choose direction while his thoughts stayed soft and unfocused. It's the kind of afternoon when the world feels muffled. Even the city noise seems far away, wrapped in cotton. Leo brushes a wet leaf from his shoulder and rounds a bend in the path. That's when he sees it. Not clearly, not at first. Just a hint of red behind a curtain of ivy, tucked between two yew hedges, where the garden dips into quiet shadow. He slows, blinks, steps closer. The ivy is thick here, tangled and lush, dripping with rain. And hidden within it, almost completely swallowed, is a phone booth. One of the old ones, with glass panes and a dome top, though the red paint has softened to something closer to rose. The glass is fogged. The door hangs slightly ajar. Leo tilts his head. It looks forgotten, like something from a dream, placed here and then left behind. He glances around. No one else in sight. The rain thickens just a little, and he ducks forward instinctively, slipping through the ivy curtain and pulling the door closed behind him. Inside, the air changes. It's quiet, deeply, unusually quiet, as though the sound of the world has been turned down, muffled further by the soft fog on the windows and the vines pressing in from all sides. Leo stands still for a moment. The booth smells of dust and damp ivy, a little like old paper, the kind of scent that feels like memory. Then the phone rings softly. A single bell-like chime, not urgent, not loud, just patient, as if it's been waiting. Leo blinks again, hesitates, then, with one quiet breath, he lifts the receiver to his ear. There is no dial, tone, just a moment of silence. Then a voice begins to speak. It is not a live voice. It does not expect anything. It does not ask. It simply tells a story. Once there was a child who wandered too far into the dusk and found the fireflies waiting. The voice is soft and clear, like a warm blanket wrapped around a quiet evening. Leo doesn't move. He just listens. The story is simple, a gentle tale of floating lanterns and still lakes, of tiny lights dancing just out of reach. The kind of story that doesn't need to go anywhere fast. It drifts, glows, settles softly in the space between heartbeats. When it ends, the voice offers nothing more. No goodbye, no click, just a quiet hum of stillness. Leo lowers the receiver slowly. The rain is still falling outside. The city is still beyond the park. But inside the booth, something feels changed. He steps out again, brushing a tendril of ivy from his shoulder, and walks back into the gentle rain. He doesn't know why he feels lighter, only that he does, and that tomorrow, or maybe the day after, he might come back. Chapter 2. The story about the baker. It is 2 days later when Leo returns. The sky is dry this time, soft with clouds that move slowly, like sheep drifting across a high meadow. The garden park is quieter than usual, though a pair of robins hop between hedges, their feathers puffed in the cool spring air. Leo's steps are slower today, not uncertain, just thoughtful. His shoes crunch softly on gravel as he follows the curve of the path, past the bench with the peeling green paint, past the flower bed where tulips have begun to open, red and yellow mouths tilted toward the sky. Then the hedge, the yews, the wall of ivy, damp from last night's dew. He parts the leaves carefully, like drawing back a curtain, and there it is, the booth, still tucked into shadow, still faded, rose and glass and vine. He hesitates before opening the door. Just a breath, no more. Then he slips inside. The quiet arrives again. That deep, almost sacred hush, where the only sound is the soft beating of his own heart. The glass is still fogged, the light is still dim. Leo exhales slowly, and again the phone rings, one chime, gentle, waiting. He lifts the receiver. The voice begins at once, as if it has been ready for him. There was once a baker, it says, whose shop sat on the corner of a cobblestone lane, just beside a sleepy tram stop. Leo closes his eyes. He can almost see it. The story moves like rising bread, slow, warm. The voice describes the baker with kind hands and flour on her cheeks, who knew which customers liked their scones crisp and which needed extra butter. She arrives before dawn each morning, rolls up her sleeves, the air inside her kitchen thick with a scent of cinnamon and cardamom, butter melting into warmth. She kept a tiny radio on the windowsill, the voice says, but often turned it low, preferring the hum of the oven and the soft creak of old floorboards. Leo imagines her there, apron tied, soft music playing like a lullaby for the loaves rising in their pans. But the part that catches Leo's breath is the sugar packets. Each morning, the voice continues. She would sit at her little kitchen table before sunrise and write tiny messages, one on each packet of sugar. The stories in the messages are simple, sometimes only a few words, but always gentle. You are doing your best. Soft hearts are brave too. If today is heavy, let it rest beside you for a while. She would place them carefully in a basket by the register. No sign, no announcement, just there, waiting to be noticed. Some people took them with their coffee and never said a word. Some left them behind, but now and then someone would return quietly, shyly, and slide a note across the counter. A simple thank you, a little drawing, once a folded crane made from a receipt slip. Leo doesn't realize how long he's been standing still until the story begins to drift toward its end. The baker never asked who read them, the voice says, but sometimes someone would leave a packet behind with a note scrawled on the back. Just one word or a little drawing of a heart, and that was enough. Then the silence returns. Leo stays there, the receiver still pressed lightly to his ear. Long after the story has ended, he imagines the quiet kitchen, the curl of steam from a mug, the scratch of pen on paper. He Imagine slipping one of those packets into his pocket, saving it for the kind of day when the sky feels too big. He pictures her, now the baker, her hands moving slowly across a sheet of sugar packets, the corners of her mouth tilted up in the barest of smiles. Someone who believes kindness doesn't need an audience. And when he steps out of the booth again, the air feels different. Not changed exactly, but noticed. The robins are still there. One flutters up to a low branch, shaking rain from its feathers. Leo walks home slowly. There is no packet in his hand, no proof, but he feels held somehow. And it is enough. Chapter 3, A Lighthouse in the Wind. The next time Leo visits the phone booth, the wind is restless. It pushes gently at his back as he crosses the park, not cold but insistent, like fingers trying to turn a page. The branches above him sway and whisper. Tulip petals tremble on their stems. Somewhere near the rose beds, a wind chime calls out its soft metallic song, clear and solitary. Leo is not in a hurry, but he doesn't meander either. His path to the booth feels almost like returning to a familiar room, one that waits without question. The ivy has grown thicker. Tiny new leaves curl at the edges, bright green and baby soft. Leo brushes them aside gently, stepping through the narrow opening. Inside, the booth holds its quiet as it always does, like a breath held for safekeeping. The phone rings, one chime, the same gentle call. He answers. There was once a lighthouse, the voice begins, on an island where the wind never quite slept. Leo closes his eyes. The voice weaves slow pictures. A solitary stone tower, pale against the sky. A small house beside it, paint peeling, wild thyme growing in the cracks of the step. The keeper, it says, was a quiet person, kind if you met them, fond of tea and tide charts and the hush of early mornings. They kept the lamp turning, cleaned the lenses with loving care, watched storms roll in from a worn wooden chair. Each day was simple, routines like folded linens, a kettle on the stove, notes in the margins of sea weather logs. There was a cat too, stray once, gray with a white patch under its chin. It followed the keeper from room to room, curling beside the hearth. when the air grew cool. But the part Leo listens to most closely is what came at night. When the wind grew strong, the voice continues. The lighthouse would hum. It wasn't mechanical, not the workings of the beacon or the groan of shifting wool. It was something else, a hum, low, constant, gentle, a sound like an old lullaby wrapped in salt and sea spray. Some said it was the island singing to the sky, the voice says. Others thought it was the sea calling home its own. The keeper never tried to explain it. They only listened. On the stormiest nights, they would sit by the window with their tea, wrapped in a shawl that smelled faintly of lavender. They'd open the shutters just a crack, enough to let the sound in, and the hum would fill the little house, fill the space between the kettle and the clock, fill the corners of their quiet heart. Sometimes they'd write letters to no one in particular, fold them and place them in a wooden drawer. Stories about the sea, about gulls perched like punctuation on the railing, about fog thick enough to erase the sky. Leo leans against the side of the booth, the phone still to his ear. He can almost hear it, that low lullaby, that hum. He imagines the cat on the windowsill, eyes half closed, ears twitching to the music of the wind. The keeper scribbling quietly, steam curling from their mug. When the story ends, the silence settles like the tide pulling back. Outside, the wind is still restless, but it feels different now. It no longer presses. It sings. Leo stays a while longer, just standing there, listening to nothing, or maybe to everything. Chapter 4. When the world feels loud. The week is full of voices, full of footsteps, full of the rustle and rush of school hallways, and too many things that feel like they matter too much. Leo moves through it quietly. He isn't unhappy, exactly, just a little tired around the edges, like paper that's been folded one too many times. He sits by the window in class and watches the clouds roll past. He listens to his friends talk and smiles when they look at him, but his thoughts drift, always gently, back to the booth. So when Saturday comes, he doesn't wait. He slips out early, before breakfast, hoodie zipped, shoes barely tied. The morning is grey and cool, the park still wrapped in mist. The path feels different in the early light, softer, the gravel muted by dew, the trees holding the hush of a world not yet woken. The ivy parts easily now, as if it recognizes him inside the booth. The quiet gathers around him like a favorite blanket. Leo breathes in, lets the silence settle, then reaches for the receiver. The chime comes as expected. One soft ring, and the story begins. There was a girl, the voice says, who wore too many bracelets and always carried a notebook full of half-written poems. Leo leans his forehead gently against the cool glass. The girl lived in a tall apartment building, the kind with stairwells that echoed and windows that overlooked blinking city lights. She didn't speak much in crowds, but she liked to write things down. Bits of conversation, snippets of dreams. She wrote on receipts and gum wrappers, and sometimes her own hand. She wrote when the world was too loud, when the corners of her mind felt frayed. She had a favorite bench in a quiet courtyard, the voice says. She'd sit there with her notebook and let the noise drain out through her pen. Some days she left pages behind, not on purpose, just forgotten, torn edges fluttering in the breeze, and people found them, not always, but often enough. Little scraps of poem, strange, lovely things. The moon is tired of being wise. My heart is a quiet hallway, all the doors cracked open. Some shadows are gentle. Leo can almost see them, blown on the benches, pressed into the bark of trees, tucked beneath stones like secret offerings. He doesn't know why the story makes his chest ache a little. Maybe because he understands. Maybe because he writes, sometimes, too. Never poems, just thoughts, scribbled in margins, typed into blank texts he never sends. The voice fades slowly. She never meant to leave pieces of herself behind, it says. But she did. And somehow that was exactly what someone else needed. Silence again. Leo stays longer than usual. Long enough for the mist to lift, for birds to begin their chatter, for the light to shift golden through the glass. He steps out. Slowly, the world is still out there, still loud, but now it feels a little softer at the edges. And Leo, walking back through the quiet park, thinks maybe he'll write something down too. Chapter 5. A Day with No Story. Leo arrives at the booth on a Thursday. The air is warm for once, touched by spring in earnest. Bees hum lazily over the garden beds, and the sun filters through new leaves with the soft gold of late afternoon. He has no reason for coming today, not really. Just a quiet pull, a need for stillness. His backpack sags from one shoulder, his shoelaces untied, but he walks the path like someone returning to a favorite place. The booth waits as it always does. A little more ivy, a small spider web in the upper corner of the glass, lit like silver thread in the sunlight. Leo steps inside. The silence greets him. He picks up the receiver, but today there is no chime, no story, only the quiet. Leo holds the phone to his ear for a long time. At first, he wonders if something is broken, if the magic has ended, if this gentle, strange thread of stories has run its course. But the silence doesn't feel empty. It feels like breath, like pause. He closes his eyes. He can still hear the hum of bees, the distant chirp of birds, the low breeze stirring leaves. The glass is warm where the sun touches it. He leans his head against it, eyes closed, the receiver resting lightly in his hand. Time begins to slow in that small space. His heartbeat no longer loud, his thoughts no longer chasing themselves in circles, and slowly he lets the quiet speak. He says, "You don't always need a story. You don't always need a reason. You can just be." Leo stays longer than he planned, longer than he meant, long enough for shadows to stretch across the grass outside. He imagines the stories that have lived here, the voices soft and sure, the tiny pauses between sentences, the space they left behind. He thinks about the baker with her sugar packets, the girl with her poems, the lighthouse with its hum, and now this moment, a chapter with no words. He leans against the glass, receiver still cradled gently in his hand. Maybe silence is its own kind of voice, and maybe the booth knew that today Leo didn't need a story to hear something true. When he finally steps out, the world feels unchanged, but somehow Leo doesn't. The air smells of lilac now. The sky has turned the soft blue of early evening. A robin calls once, then settles. There is no story to carry today, and still he carries something. Chapter 6. The Old Man and the Ferns. Leo returns to the booth after school one quiet Monday. His day has been uneventful full of half-finished sentences and the soft scratch of pencil on lined paper. The kind of day that passes gently, without friction, but even so, he feels drawn again to that still corner of the garden. The air is thick with the scent of earth. A light rain has passed, and now the garden glows with dampness. Ferns uncurl at the edges of the path, lush and glistening. Tiny rivulets of water slip between the stones, the last whispers of the rain's retreat. The booth, shadowed beneath its ivy, welcomes him back without ceremony. He steps inside, listens. The chime comes, a single note, and then the voice. There was once an old man who lived at the edge of a forest where the ferns grew thick and the air always smelled like moss. Leo lets his eyes drift closed. The man had a house made of stone with a roof thatched in bark and bramble. No one remembered how long he'd lived there. He moved slowly, wore sweaters that smelled of cedar, and spent his days tending the ferns. He didn't garden to harvest, the voice says. He gardened to note it. Each morning he would walk the narrow paths barefoot, feeling the soil give softly beneath his steps. He whispered greetings to the snails and patted the damp trunks of trees like old friends. Some said he could speak to the forest. Others said he simply listened better than most. The story lingers on the small details. The way he dried mint in bundles near the stove. The way he hummed without realizing. The way the forest grew quieter when he was nearby, as though holding its breath to hear him. He kept the kettle on a hook by the fire, always ready. His cupboards were full of old tin cups, chipped and mismatched, but clean and waiting. Visitors were rare, but never turned away. He had a rocking chair that creaked in rhythm with the wind. A pair of thick wool socks, always drying near the hearth. A candle stub beside his bed melted into the shape of a sleeping bird. He never left notes, the voices, but when he passed, they found his journal, not filled with thoughts, just names, names of plants, of beetles, of clouds. Even he named everything, not to possess it, but to remember it. He believed everything deserved to be known, even if only once. Leo presses the receiver closer. The story finishes like mist lifting from moss, and as silence returns, Leo stays very still. He thinks about the old man, about tending things not to change them, but to honor them, about paying attention as a kind of love. His mind lingers on the idea of naming clouds, of watching one pass and thinking, that one is soft lantern, that one is drifting thought. When he steps outside, the ferns near the booth seem greener somehow. The light falling through the leaves softer. A raindrop slips from the tip of a leaf and lands gently on his sleeve. He watches it soak in. Leo walks home slowly, the quiet words of the story still tucked gently into the folds of his mind, and behind them, like a gentle echo, the names of things beginning to gather quietly inside him. Chapter 7. The Conductor Who Waited. The clouds are low when Leo next visits the booth. It is the kind of gray that softens all colors. Pavement turns silver. Leaves look painted with quiet. The world hums low, as if waiting for something kind to happen. Leo's steps are quiet, no rush, just a gentle return. The ivy rustles gently as he parts it. Inside the booth, the light is soft and still. He lifts the receiver. The chime sounds. A pause, and then the voice. There was once a conductor who stood at the end of a platform where no trains ever came. Leo stills. The story unfolds slowly. The conductor wore a tidy uniform, always pressed and neat, and carried a small notebook in his coat pocket. He arrived each morning with a thermos of tea and a newspaper folded under one arm. He stood exactly where he was meant to, eyes on the horizon. The tracks were real, the voice says, but the trains had stopped running long ago. People walked by sometime. Joggers, dog walkers, a few curious children. They would see him there, still and quiet, and ask who he was waiting for. The schedule, he would say, tapping his notebook, has not been cancelled, only delayed. And so he waited. The days passed. The seasons turned. He swept the platform clean each morning, picked up leaves, brushed away snow, watched the fog roll in and lift again. He tended a row of planter boxes along the edge, grew thyme and marigolds and tiny purple violas, left small stones beside each, hand painted with words like hope and soon. He spoke softly to the birds. The voice continues, and kept a spare scarf in his bag in case someone came by and needed it. Sometimes he would read aloud from his paper to the empty tracks, wild news, weather, bits of poetry. One winter, he built a small bench from driftwood and placed it under the old station sign. He painted it sky blue. Sometimes people sat there quietly just for a while, and though no train arrived, he stayed. Not because he believed in the train, the voice says, but because he believed someone somewhere might one day arrive. He wrote in his notebook every evening, not about trains, but about people, those who smiled as they passed, those who paused unsure. He wrote their names if they offered them, or just details. A red scarf, a shy nod. Leo doesn't move. The story rests gently in the space around him. When the voice fades, he hears only the soft breath of the booth, his own heart, the silence of something understood. Leo presses his palm to the glass, feels the cool of it. Waiting, he thinks, is its own kind of love, the kind that expects nothing, that stays anyway. When he leaves, the sky is still gray, but the world feels filled with the quiet promise of arrivals not yet seen. Chapter 8. The voice that knew. It is raining again, softly, steadily, a hush that smooths the city into something slower. Leo doesn't use his umbrella. The rain feels fine, like a familiar song you hum without thinking. The garden path is darker than usual, puddles mirroring a sky the color of old silver. The ivy, heavy now with wet, parts around him like a curtain drawn back with care. Inside the booth, the air is damp but kind. He lifts the receiver without hesitation, and the chime sounds not just soft, gentle, almost familiar. The voice begins. There was once a boy who wandered through a city on a rainy day, with water in his shoes and questions in his chest. Leo freezes. The voice is the same, yet different, quieter, warmer, like it's speaking directly to him. He walked past windows and dogs and doorways, not looking for anything, but still hoping he'd find something kind. Leo holds the phone tightly. He found a garden, not special, not empty, just quiet. And in the garden, he found a booth wrapped in green, a booth that had been waiting for him. Leo's eyes sting each time he entered. The world slowed each time the stories waited, and each one left a warmth he carried home in his bones. He closes his eyes. The stories were not answers. They were not instruction. They were reminded that kindness still lives, that quiet can hold you, that even when alone you are not unseen. The voice pauses. The boy never spoke back. He didn't need to. The booth already knew. Leo presses the receiver to his cheek. A single tear slides warm and unnoticed. Then one day, when the rain fell just right, the boy heard the story that was meant for him. A story that said simply, "You are not alone. You've never been." Silence. A soft, perfect silence. Leo doesn't move. He stays there, cradled in the hush. Listening to his own breath. Outside, the rain continues, steady and slow, and inside the ivy-covered booth, Leo smiles.